Okay, so picture this. It's the middle of World War II, and Britain makes this huge promise to India. A promise of self-government, but there's a catch. They need India's full support in the war. This whole deal was called the Cripps mission, and let me tell you, it went down in flames. So let's get right into what happened, because it's a really critical moment in India's fight for freedom.
And this was the big question on everyone's mind back in 1942. Was this a real deal for freedom, or was it just, a clever wartime trick? A desperate move by the British Empire to get what they wanted?
So let's set the scene. The year is 1942. World War II is absolutely raging. Britain is in a really tough spot, facing huge pressure from Germany and Japan. To have any shot at winning, they desperately needed India's help. I mean, we're talking full, unconditional support from their biggest colony. But here's the thing. This created a massive standoff. On one hand, Britain needed Indian soldiers, supplies, you name it. But on the other, Indian leaders were digging in their heels. They were like, look, we'll help, but only if you give us a real, concrete plan for our independence. The days of empty promises, yeah, those were long gone. All right, so to try and break this stalemate, the British government plays its card. They send a top minister, Sir Stafford Cripps, all the way to India. His whole mission? To put a formal proposal on the table, something he really hoped would finally get everyone to agree. So what was actually in this big offer? What was Britain really willing to give? Let's break down what Sir Stafford Cripps actually put on the table. Okay, so this is where you can really see the push and pull of the whole deal. On the one hand, you've got some pretty big promises for after the war. Dominion status, a brand new constitution, even protections for minorities. Sounds pretty good, right? But then you look closer. Provinces could just choose not to join the new India. That's a huge deal. And even bigger, Britain would keep total control over India's defense during the war. That was a major red flag for a lot of people. And we really got to talk about this term dominion status because it's absolutely crucial. This was not complete independence, not even close. Think of it like Canada or Australia back then. Yeah, you govern yourself on the inside, but you're still part of the British Commonwealth. The British king or queen is still your head of state. For many Indian leaders, this just wasn't good enough. So you might think, okay, maybe there's something to work with here. But no, the whole thing was a complete and utter failure. Instead of bringing people together, it ended with pretty much every major party in India saying a hard no. Yep, the two biggest political players, the Indian National Congress and the Muslim League, both took one look at this deal and rejected it. But, and this is what makes it so fascinating, they said no for completely different and actually totally conflicting reasons. And this just shows you how complicated things were. You had the Indian National Congress, who wanted one united, fully independent India. For them, dominion status was a non-starter, and that opt-out clause, they saw it as a recipe for dividing the country. Then you had the Muslim League. They felt the offer didn't go nearly far enough to guarantee their vision for a separate state of Pakistan. That same opt-out clause was just too wishy-washy for them. At the end of the day, for the Congress Party, it all came down to trust and who held the real power. The famous line at the time was that this offer was like a post-dated check on a failing bank, especially with Britain holding on to defense. This wasn't the real transfer of power they had been fighting for. So the mission's a bust. Cripps goes home. But here's the twist. The failure didn't just keep things as they were. Oh no. It had this huge unintended consequence. It actually lit a fire under the independence movement and pushed things forward fast. So Sir Stafford Cripps packs his bags and goes back to London with nothing. The deadlock wasn't broken, it was worse. The gap between what Britain was offering and what Indian leaders demanded had just become a massive canyon. And this is the key takeaway, really. The failure sent a crystal clear message. Indians were completely done with half measures and limited reforms. The frustration across the country just boiled over. And what happened next? Just a few months later, this frustration exploded into the massive Quit India movement, a huge nationwide protest demanding that the British just leave immediately. So yeah, 1942, that was the year everything changed. It was the year that talk turned into action. You could say the failure of the Cripps mission was the spark that ignited the final and most intense fire of the entire freedom struggle. And that's the real irony here, isn't it? By failing, the Cripps mission basically proved there was no middle ground anymore. In their attempt to kind of delay full independence, Britain accidentally showed everyone that a complete break was the only option left on the table. It actually pushed India's ultimate goal of freedom even closer. Which kind of leaves us with one last big question to think about. Was this the moment? Was this failed mission the actual point of no return? Did the collapse of this one deal seal the fate of the British Empire in India, making independence not a question of if, but just a question of when?